I was one of the best juniors at my club, Alverstoke Lawn Tennis Club, and Dave Sims was the coach there, and Dave saw some potential in me from a personality, a communicator, when I was about 17, and offered me some summer work, and did some French students coaching for him, and I can remember as if it was yesterday a feeling of, and it's such a great feeling of thinking I'm actually quite good at this. Just seeing people respond to information and enthusiasm. And at the end of that summer, Dave sat me and my dad down and said, look, you know, I'd like to extend this beyond a summer. I'd like to offer you a job. And I did a deal with my dad, and the deal was that he would back my decision as long as I promised to strive to be the very best coach I could ever possibly be. And so it began from there, really. Well, I use my professional journey as a good way of communicating with other coaches, because I can quite comfortably say there is not a tennis type of player that I have not coached. So from having been an assistant club coach, I then went to Sutton Junior Tennis Centre, where I was basically a salaried full-time coach. And in that 3 years, I coached ladies' mornings, I coached learning difficulties, I coached mini tennis, I coached county standard players. And there I started with Keith Soul, the Cheam High Tennis Scholarship, which still exists to this day. And that was my first real performance coaching experience, and I gave my life to it. I lived with the players in a boarding accommodation. I don't think I had a day off in 2 years. I gave everything I had, and that gave me a taste for the journey of improving a player and seeing them on the match court, whether or not they could win or lose, and then if they lose, go back, regenerate, work again. And that really gave me an idea of goal setting linked to competition. Did my PCA, which was a massive turning point in my professional life, because I met Keith Reynolds, because I met Alistair Hyam, I met Charles Applewhite, I met these coaching gurus, and I was tempted to here, where I sit now at Loughborough, where I became the Leicestershire County Performance Officer. That was a big step for me, because having been mentored and looked after by Dave Sims, by Gordon Burt, by Keith Soul, I arrived in Leicestershire without a penny in my pocket, but loads of enthusiasm, and told to get on with it. And Alistair Hyam and Keith mentored me a lot, but it was my baby. And I did 3 years here as County Performance Officer, and produced a lot of players to such a degree that Mark Cox offered me a position as a Rover national coach, which is the proudest day of my professional life. It was a huge moment. I can remember where I was when he offered me the job, and there's no negotiations. Yes, please. And I worked for Mark in his team until Patrice Hagelard came, and there was another change. And at that point, and that was, I'd been a national coach for 3 years, I had a choice then. I could either reapply for my job. I'd come to the end of a journey with my players, and I think that's an important thing to mention. Everything I've ever done has been about players. So I was a CPO. I was a CPO for about 5 minutes before I was a CPO and an individual coach of good players within my county. And I was made a national coach because of the good players that I coached were good enough to warrant me being employed to coach them. And I ceased being a national coach when those players were no longer available for me to coach. And it wasn't felt that I was of the appropriate level to move on with Jamie Baker and Tom Rushby into professional tennis. So I decided that I didn't want to be told who I was going to coach. So that was when my now wife and I went to Sweden, where she's from. And I said to her it would be funny to apply for a job, see if the Swedish Tennis Federation give me a job, and they did. And I ran a tennis gymnasium there for them, and a national academy in Linköping. And I mean, that was a fascinating year. I did a year there, but wanted to come back to the Midlands, even though I'm not from here, but this is now home. And Nottingham Tennis Centre offered me the opportunity to come back. And I knew when I came back that this was the last move in my career, that this was now about my legacy. I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be accountable. I wanted to create my legacy and say, well, this is what I'm about. These are the people that I respect and want to work with. And then Nottingham, and now Nottingham Loughborough, has been a 4-year project since I got back. At the time, in hindsight, when you look at your career development, and Keith told me a very important thing, which I always remember and abide by and tell other people, that if you apply for something or you want something, if it would be a surprise to get it, you're not ready. And if at that time it was Jeremy Bates had said to me, you can go round the world with Jamie Baker and Tom Rushby, I would have been maybe a little surprised. So maybe I wasn't quite ready. Maybe I needed another journey to do. So at the time I would have felt a bit bruised and battered, and going somewhere else was a dignified way of doing my own thing. But ultimately it was without question the right thing for my development. And the funny thing is within 12 months Jamie and I were back together again working. And I would imagine from that time in Sweden, Jamie probably looked at me with different eyes, because the fact that there was an international aspect to what I do, or what I did then. And, you know, those 12 months in Sweden were probably the biggest turning point in my career. So, you know, I don't rely on other people to decide my destiny. So if I take a hit, it doesn't stick very long. Never has done.